You know, when I made my video on the Yugioh GX girls and complaining about them, I wasn't expecting it to be at the point of me writing the script to be the most popular out of the 3 problems with Yugioh girls of the series. Yugioh GX seems to be the sweet spot for content creation on this channel, and I figured, hey, it's been about 4 months since that video, might as well keep my word and talk about a character that I said warranted their own video. Yubel.
This is not okay. This needs to stop now.
Yo mama's so ugly!
Blow it out your ass.
Also, just so I can avoid a headache, I'll be referring to Yubel as they, them, mainly because depending on which version you're watching, the Yu-Gi-Oh anime will give different vibes to the character's gender. For example, in the English dub, you'll have that warped, slightly feminine voice and female pronouns, and I'm focusing more on the Japanese version of this, especially since the dub actually changed the ending, because not only did Season 4 of GX get removed, but it did the same to the last episode of Season 3, which left the implication that a lot of characters were dead or stuck somewhere with no way to get back. Plus, if you go to the wiki, they'll refer to Yubel as a her, and the Japanese version, they've been referred to with both pronouns, so I'm frankly tired of people who don't bother to do their own research and just jump onto the damn empty side of the pool labeling someone. And so, hi, I'm MangaKamen, and let's talk about Yubel. In my video on the Yu-Gi-Oh GX girls and complaining about them, I wasn't expecting it to be at the point of me writing the script to be the most popular out of the 3 problems with Yu-Gi-Oh girls of the series. It's getting really annoying in all honesty. In any case, Yubel is the main antagonist in Season 3 of Yu-Gi-Oh GX. They are a renegade dual spirit that has a connection to the main character, Judai, and has an obsession with him. As it turns out, in ancient times, Yubel was a person who was set to become a guardian for the Supreme King, a former life of Judai's. Obviously, when you start off with a relatively normal-looking person and turn them into a demonic dragon person, you might as well think it's not a pleasant experience at the very least. Taking one look at Yubel, you can see that Yubel's non-human form has both draconic and demonic features, in addition to most notably distinction between a male and female side. The design of the character lacks symmetry, balance, and even a clear sex. This will come into play later, as Yubel represents one of the bigger themes of Yu-Gi-Oh GX. Fusion. I'll get into Yubel's appearance later in the video though, since I still have some more ground to cover to make sure that you guys have an understanding of what Yubel is. Make sure you guys have an understanding of Yubel's backstory. The reason for why Yubel needed to go through this horrendous transformation was to be a guardian to the prince that Judai is a descendant of. You see, there was this power called the Gentle Darkness that the prince couldn't wield until he was older to control it. As such, Yubel took on the role and basically became, well, this. After Yubel's transformation, the prince swore that he would love Yubel and only Yubel, which is what led to some nasty consequences. Eventually, time passed and the modern era came into being, with Yubel's spirit becoming into a card by industrial illusions. You know, Pegasus, first the god cards, then the 3 demons. What is with your company making cards that can effectively destroy the world and cause many people pain? Anyway, Yubel's card eventually got into the hands of a little Judai, and since the card was a gift given to Judai from his father, who we never actually see in the show, it became Judai's favorite card and formed a close connection with it, and subsequently the spirit within it as well. So Yubel was back. Unfortunately, while it may have been a reunion to Yubel took their guardianship a bit too far. Anyone who caused Judai any sort of sadness, or if Judai lost a duel, they would fall into a coma. Yubel would guard Judai against any and all threats, even threats that they perceived to be towards their relationship. Eventually, Judai became ostracized by people who thought he was cursed, and eventually Judai learns that Yubel was the one hurting anyone who would duel him. So, you're a little kid. You're being plagued by some demonic force in a card game, and you don't want to throw Yubel away. So, what's the logical thing you do? Why, you send the card into outer space, of course! Yeah, I still maintain that Yu-Gi-Oh! GX is one of the most cracktastic series out there when it comes to Yu-Gi-Oh! And I still enjoy it for that. But some of the ideas are just insane when you really think about it for more than a few minutes. Regardless of whatever crack the writers of Yu-Gi-Oh! GX were on, Judai thought this was a good idea on how to fix Yubel. But unfortunately, Yubel was exposed to an energy that was introduced in the 2nd season, the Light of Destruction, which left Yubel in isolation and in terrible pain due to it. And as such, Yubel began to become insane because of the isolation. and even took this to be a very sadistic view of love. It was a coping mechanism to protect themselves to believe that love and pain are the same thing. I mean, when you're suffering for a decade straight, you gotta do what you can in order to protect your brain.
Yeah, this is big brain time.
And then unfortunately, Yubel was unwilling to believe that Judai would ever hurt them without good intentions, and that sharing pain was a form of love. Yubel sees love as sharing feelings, both joy and suffering, and their suffering in space, then crashing to Earth where most of their body was gone, save for an arm that can meld with others and control them. Anyway, their warped view of love is the motivation for Yubel. They believe that all that suffering is a symbol of Judai's love, and to that end, Yubel wishes for Judai to experience similar pain so they can express their love to him too. Now, this isn't going to be a full recap of Season 3 and Yubel as a whole, but I will bring up specific examples in future segments. This segment is to give you a background of the character going forward. You know, we don't really talk about character design all that much on this channel, which is sad because my art degree is doing nothing but collecting dust nowadays, so I want to take some time to talk about Yubel's design since I feel as though it has a good connection to the themes of GX. That being alchemy and fusion. Now, I'm sure many of you are already thinking, well, duh, Kamen. Fusion's a given if you look at Yubel, since not only do they have the fused parts of a man and a woman, but their plan was to fuse all 12 dimensions together. And right you are, and I know that's crazy saying that, but I still feel the need to explain since not everyone is fully familiar with Yubel. You see, if you're unaware, almost every main character in the series of GX has a fusion aspect to their decks, or at one time or another had them. Judai being the poster boy for fusion, since the elemental heroes are known for their fusion strategies. It should be obvious, but Yubel's design is a fusion of human and dual spirit. It's both a symbolic and practical meaning. If you look at the clear differences of the male and female formed fused into one being for Yubel's body, it's a reference to ancient alchemic figures for dualistic nature of the universe, and the human body was a common symbol in alchemic imagery. Now, there's an actual term for it, but since it's now considered a slur nowadays, at least I think it is, I will not be saying it directly because 1, I don't like using slurs, 2, YouTube doesn't like me using slurs, and 3, I don't trust the internet not to take me out of context to make me look like a horrible person. Essentially, if you look towards the concept of Yubel initially being a human then infusing with a spirit, it relates to the unification of human and spiritual natures. In a sense, you consider it a union of opposites, or a representation of the alchemic body. Near the end of the season, Yubel's goal is to destroy the 12 dimensions by using superpolymerization. Granted, I'm stretching a little bit and really cutting down a lot of details here, because if you really want to play that game, Judai's initial ace monster was Flame Wingman, a fusion monster that is made by combining a male and female hero into one. It has a dragon element to its design, and it also does burn damage, like Yubel. Hell, the fact that in Season 1, alchemy was used as an actual class in the school, and Judai defeated the 3 demons with the Philosopher's Stone. Honestly, design-wise, I think Yubel does a good job of fulfilling the themes of alchemy and fusion very well. It's also just a very wicked design, too, kind of a step up from the old man in a test tube, an evil cult leader who was voiced by Dio before Dio. Then we get to the second and third forms, which go into a fusion aspect a bit more, with more heads and faces being thrown into the mixture. And while this is in Season 3, in Season 4, when the big bad of the season Darkness takes Yubel, Judai is able to save them with superpolymerization, fusing them with Neos. So yeah, in concept I believe that fusion is a vital component and is used quite well in reference to the character. Hell, with the exception of Johan, Yubel has the ability to fuse with other characters and will often give the demonic arm that fuses with their host, either with Martin or Amon. I'd be remiss if Yubel doesn't also have a callback to previous Yu-Gi-Oh villains. It's obvious if you look at the hair, as it has the callbacks to Merrick and Bakura, and they also have the nightmare face, complete with the bulging veins and their own brand of insanity. To make note, it's stated that Yubel is able to possess someone by exploiting the darkness in their hearts. Although Johan doesn't really have darkness in his heart, it's why Yubel had to remove Johan's soul and put in Raid Mode Dragon in order to take over Johan's body. And this is a good segue into... Yubel is a manipulator. That is plain and simple. They managed to manipulate the first disc boss, that is Professor Cobra. Yubel used Cobra to have the students wear the... Am I reading this right? The death belts? Okay then, I can see why bio bands were chosen for the dub. Anyway, the death belts would drain the energy of students, and that energy was used to resurrect Yubel. So you may be asking, why was this pointy-haired freak Cobra helping Yubel? Well, Yubel promised Cobra that they would revive Cobra's dead son, and then manipulated Cobra to kill himself. Yeah, Yubel is sadistic. Very sadistic. Yugioh isn't really deprived of those kinds of sadism and will use whatever darkness there is in the hearts of people to use them as puppets. That's Yubel's MO. In the case of Viper, while he is an unlikable jackass, he's also sympathetic since he just wants his son back from the dead and Yubel exploited that grief. Yubel is also very keen on throwing away those who lose their use to them, as in the point where Yubel manipulated Viper's memories, showing that he saved his son and then making Viper hallucinate to fall off the platform to his death. Yubel is probably also one of the smartest villains in Yu-Gi-Oh! As well, since they have the ability to sense the negative thoughts and doubts of people and use that to manipulate them. You can see this with Viper, Martin, Amon. They'll even prey on other negative emotions, like take for example the creation of Super Polymerization, where 4 of Judai's friends were sacrificed to create the card. Or even Judai himself, where Yubel exploited the doubt, the terrible things that Judai did during the time he was possessed by the Supreme King. This, along with how I highlighted Yubel's past and their motivations for going after Judai, make Yubel into one of the most intriguing villains on their own. Yubel is malicious, Yubel is intelligent, Yubel is able to exploit the weaknesses of others. Yubel is actually a pretty strong duelist. They only lose once in the entire series. And even then, Yubel still has standards. Yubel believes firmly in their form of love. Yes, it is a twisted form of love to any outsider, and you and me hopefully, but it's due to the trauma that Yubel had to endure. Not an excuse, mind you, for their actions, just an explanation. But when they learned that Amon sacrificed his childhood friend, someone he loved, to gain the power of Exodia, and he had no remorse for sacrificing their loved one, Yubel doesn't like that. Sure, Yubel will kill people. Sure, Yubel will manipulate people. Sure, Yubel can be insane. But don't you dare trample on the power of love! Speaking of love... Now for this section, we need to discuss 2 other characters. Obviously Judai, but another character we need to talk about is Johan, the Crystal Beast Duelist. And the shipping that was engineered with Yubel possessing Johan's body. Oh boy, here we go. Shit. If you're not familiar with Johan, he's essentially the North Academy version of Yuki Judai, a character who has a slew of duel monster spirits and immediately became friends with Judai after they first met. It's obvious that Johan is a parallel to that of Judai. I think it should be obvious since they can both see dual spirits, they both have similar attitudes when dueling, i.e. having fun even at their own detriment, and they even have similar design elements between the two of them. There are even points when characters will talk about how similar the two are with their eyes and attitudes. The 2 characters have chemistry, and while obviously a lot of people will take this to mean more intimate relationship status for characters, I view the 2 as more kindred spirits and friends than anything romantic. But then again, hey, the internet's the internet, what the frig do I know? And considering that Johan has frills to his design, uses rainbows and jewels for his deck, and in the original Japanese version, Johan had a more feminine voice, there are plenty of flags there. Oh, and even Yubel thinks at one point or another the 2 had attraction to each other. Then again, Yubel is rated in yandere energy, so who knows if that's just not the jealousy talking. So, what does this have to do with Yubel? Everything, my friends. So, it's important to talk about that Johan and Judai have a relationship that in a sense makes Yubel jealous. After all, Judai was willing to go to extreme lengths to help Johan, someone who, if we're being completely honest, has only a relatively short amount of time since the 2 actually met and became friends between the 2 of them. I mean, from Yubel's point of view, the lengths that Judai is willing to go to save Johan is something that is like, why didn't you do that for me, jerk? I will say that while I have my own personal misgivings for this, Judai had an obsession with finding Johan. It can be justified, though, since Johan sacrificed himself to save not only Judai, but everyone in the Duel Academy from when Yubel had transported the entire school to a desert dimension, with the students becoming zombies and harpy ladies attacking the academy.
Cocaine is a hell of a drug.
It's something that places a lot of blame onto Judai's shoulders, not only because was it an evil that had a personal tie to Judai that affected other people, but now has also a debt to Johan, who essentially martyred himself to save everyone else. Regardless, it's because of that loyalty to friends, the guilt and debt that Judai owes to Johan, that Yubel uses Johan as a vessel. It's literally meant to hurt Judai even more. I think that this is important to understand just how far Yubel is willing to go in order to express their warped view of love to him. To Judai. So we've got the groundwork, and I think it's pretty much so that Yubel is an interesting character, even more so as a villain. However, as I said in my video about Yu-Gi-Oh! GX Girls, my thoughts on Yubel is more complex than as the character themselves. As a villain, I find Yubel to be very intriguing. Their motivations on the warped view of concept of love is fascinating, as well as how Yubel suffered to come to that mindset. They're also one of the most successful villains in Yu-Gi-Oh! History. I found their backstory not only tragic, but also a tale of warning of how it's possible to warp anything as a positive experience in order to protect yourselves. But Yubel in Season 3 as a whole, I have issues with. And I want to make it clear, I'm not saying that this is bad writing, nor do I believe it to be weak writing at all. If anything, I'd say it's more preferential differences in what I personally like and dislike in a story. I try to make this clear in a lot of my videos that I'm not saying what I like and dislike is objectively the truth. Unless I state it specifically, I do not believe that anything can be objectively bad or objectively good. But as the internet has taught me, no one really cares to listen. I'm just screaming into the void at this point, into the endless abyss. God, my script writing got me depressed. So I guess we'll get my general thoughts out on not only Yubel, but Season 3 as well, since they are connectedly tied to each other. The biggest issues I have is the obvious tone shift from Season 2. Like, one of the things that I really enjoyed about GX up to that point was the lighthearted tone. Sure, there were times where the show got serious, but a lot of the time it was more lighthearted. And as a reminder, I'm still talking about the Japanese original version, not the English dub, which pretty much butchered and made everything a goof fest. Which I do like in some sense, but
That's right, Booby-Head!
I don't know, when I'm talking about story and character development, I prefer the original Japanese. Like, we know the memes, a school made for learning how to duel with a children's card game, and yeah, it's silly, but it was an interesting premise to say the least, and I still like it to this day. It's why I am talking about it right now. Don't get me wrong, the first 2 seasons weren't perfect, not by a long shot with all that filler, but I will say that the depressing aura of Season 3 really felt like a sucker punch to the jaw. There's always been this mentality in fiction that I really can't stand, that the whole more serious, darker tone equates to good mentality. Season 2 ended with Tyranno turning into a T-Rex, flying out into outer space with Neos, and smashing a satellite to stop an evil cult leader from mind-controlling the entire world with laser beams! That's insane, and I love it! But even in the early part of GX's 3rd season, I could feel the creators were trying to make me take the show super serious, and I don't know what to tell ya. I'm not saying that I don't appreciate the attempt of taking the show in a different direction, but how the cast was effectively killed off for the new guys, it really made it hard for me to enjoy Season 3. The supporting cast was essentially just broken down into fuel for Judai's heel turn, and that in turn effectively hurt the development that was rushed through in the shortened Season 4. That's if you're just watching the Japanese version. You didn't even get anything like that if you were just a dub-only kid. Honestly, part of the reason why I enjoyed the manga adaptation of Yu-Gi-Oh! GX is that while it too had a lighthearted tone to the story, it still felt grounded and slowly made its way introducing more serious elements into it. It was a slow burn, as it were, and it didn't just fling us into the darkness. I guess that's the problem with a sequel series. Like, by the time you're seeing this video, I probably posted a video talking about Ryan from MGS2 where I briefly talk about sequels, and how more often than not, whenever you have a sequel to a popular piece of media, there tends to be a bit of an issue of repetition. The issue is that we as people want more of what we like. We want more of the same thing if it's good, and it's our natures to do so. And in our overindulged, content-filled culture of today, we're constantly looking to get our fix like junkies. And GX was a direct sequel to the original Yu-Gi-Oh! Hell, its full title is Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Monsters GX. It's the only other Yu-Gi-Oh! Series that shares dual monsters in its title with the manga adaptation of the OG. GX, at the beginning, wasn't a well-liked series. I'm gonna admit that. And it's that lighter tone that a lot of people used to latch onto to hate it. Judai was a cheerful character, and dueling wasn't just his only interest. He could play baseball, and he even played his bootleg Game Boy Advance. And then Season 3 happened, and an attempt to turn Judai more into Yami Yugi was made. Judai developed a darker and quote-unquote more serious personality, and he fuses with Yubel and reawakens his Supreme King past life. And it gives him superpowers!
I am your undoing!
Ouch.
Judai's backstory with Yubel is a parallel to Atem's. Ancient royalty, the reincarnation to fight against an evil force in the future, a loyal friend who makes a sacrifice to become the king's protector and becomes, oddly enough, a card in a children's card game in the future? It's Chosen One BS! I like Atem, but we don't need to be wanking him off. The first season of Yu-Gi-Oh! GX made fun of this bloody concept, even the dub when it had Cyrus wondering if it was destiny for him and Jaden to be ancient pharaoh and I'm your guardian, and Jaden just goes,
No offense, but that's just lame.
back in the earlier seasons, Judai wasn't Atem. He was just a regular kid going to Duel Monsters school paid for by the most egotistical man in the world. He wasn't the reincarnation of an ancient king. He didn't have the super special awesome cards that no one else had. He was just chilling out in the schoolyard, and finding trouble wasn't too hard. Yeah, I like the dub version of GX's opening, Fight Me. And I think that's why I dislike Yubel. Not as a character, and not for the specific writing, but rather what they were used for. And you can easily argue that Judai's transformation into a more serious character and ultimately turn the entire series into a more serious and darker show is something that I do not like. Yubel was the catalyst for that change, and I don't hate them as a character, I just hate how they were used to change the series. Hell, you remember when I said that Yubel took elements from Merrick and Bakura? That can easily be a sign of wanting to have GX take more elements from the original series. Kazuki Takahashi still had a hand in development of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime series. He did until like the midpoint of 5Ds, I believe. And I brought this quote up before, but it bears repeating. It's hard to show growth with nothing but cheery characters that can overcome anything with that I love dueling attitude. That's not enough to beat someone like the imposing Merrick. And it's a mindset that I cannot disagree with more. Then again, I still think Kazuki was still recovering from drawing Zork's Dragon Dong in the Yu-Gi-Oh! Manga. Seriously, the guy crashed after doing that. No matter how terrible the situation is, a positive attitude can help people get through the dark times. And the way this quote is being made, it seems like the only way to beat someone like Yami Merrick was through pure seriousness. And I don't agree with that. And I also don't agree that you can develop cheerful characters. You can still test their waters, and the fact that they're still able to have like a good time and have a smile and through these desperate times, it shows that they are really willing to take the situation serious but not compromise their own beliefs. Smiling in the face of adversity is something that I respect, and how Kazuki phrases the quote, it paints Judai as an idiot. I mean, he is an idiot, but he's not ignorant of the consequences of duels he may lose. He certainly didn't treat every duel he was in as a simple game, and I've said that before. GX had an identity, and it's a shame that a lot of people didn't give that series a chance to become its own thing. And because of Yubel, because of what they used them for, Yu-Gi-Oh! GX just became a more hollowed version of the original Yu-Gi-Oh! And I think that's what really hurt the series. So, while this isn't Yubel's fault, I can't help but feel conflicted as Yubel as a character was used to essentially create a second attempt. I want to stress that I do like Yubel as a character, and I don't blame the faults of the show on Yubel at all. Yubel's story is a story of pain, suffering, and a cautionary tale of how love can be warped and used to hurt others. And I feel as though that is a good story in and of itself. It's just that when you pull back and look at GX as a whole, and even the original Yu-Gi-Oh! At times, you can see that Yubel's origin along with Judai's mirrors that of the Thames, and that hurts the overall show in my opinion. Still, I do find Yubel to be a very fascinating character, and even more so a villain. Although I will say that the ending of Season 3 where Judai fuses with Yubel, I do feel that it was kind of rushed, and I'm of two minds of Yubel essentially getting what they want, and it just leaves a bit of a sour taste that the backstory just gets me a little irked. Again, I'm not saying it's bad per se in the writing department, but I wouldn't hold Yu-Gi-Oh! GX Season 3 on a pedestal like a lot of other people would. But I still find Yubel to be Yu-Gi-Oh's most fascinating villain, when it comes to motives, intelligence, and even their backstory. At least until the reincarnated king stuff comes up. But hey, that's an opinion. An anime opinion. God, I'm fucking cringe. Still, I hope you all enjoyed this video. Thank you for watching. I'm MangaKamen, and if you made it to the end of the video, and you want to see more Yu-Gi-Oh! GX content, please leave a comment saying, "Get your game on!" God, I'm still so freaking cringe.